Hey, good morning. God's blessings to you. We are in John 20. We're finally here. It's Easter. It's the resurrection. We finally made it. We've gone through 19 whole chapters of John, and we've got 2 chapters left. John 20, this is Easter, and then the week after Easter when Jesus shows up to show himself to Thomas. Wonderful story. And then chapter 21 is what we call the epilogue. And things just keep getting better and better and better. And I really love this portion of the Bible. Might be my favorite part depending on the week. Each gospel, and when I say that I mean the 4 gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, give us a unique perspective of the passion of Jesus. And when I say passion, I mean Holy Week. I mean his suffering, his death, and his resurrection. And each gospel gives us a slightly different perspective. We've got 4 sides so we can see the whole picture. And I'm really going to draw that out next week when it comes to who was there on Easter morning, as in who are the special visitors, because we don't get it mentioned here in the first 10 verses. But next week we are going to read about 2 angels. So we'll save it for then, but you can just ready yourself for that because I love comparing and contrasting the 4 Gospels. John, though, is unique, as always, and he's the only one who tells us about a particular foot race which happened on Easter morning, and that is so like John, and I love reading about it, so let's hop into verse 1. Now, on the first day of the week, and John puts it like this because this is going to be the overwhelming theme behind his Easter story, is that this is a new creation. So just remember that when we get to the 2 angels. We're going all the way back to Genesis, but now it's recapitulated, big fancy theological word. So we're not merely returning, but it's a capstone. So it's a new creation, one that supersedes the old one. And this is the first day of the new week. You could call it the 8th day. That is a term that Christians love because it means you've broken the cycle of that original week, and now we're living in eternity, not that the resurrection has come. And we're living in this tension. We're living in the new week, and yet it hasn't been fully realized. That will happen when our own bodies are resurrected. But Jesus is the first fruits of the resurrection. That's what Paul calls him. And so we're already getting to live this out a little bit right now, even if it's not fully realized. So on the first day of the week, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb early while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. So this also goes back to the beginning of the Gospels because you've got a new Mary here now. This is not Mary, the mother of Jesus. This is a different Mary, and there's lots of Marys. Depending on how you count in the New Testament, there's up to 7. But we know a little bit about Mary Magdalene's story. Jesus cast demons out from her, we learn from the other Gospels. So she has a terrific backstory, sinful past that Jesus has redeemed her from, cast the demons out, and now she is a follower of Christ. And you get this with all the 4 Gospels. You got these women showing up to the tomb. And this shows Christianity is for everybody. It really is. It's a beautiful thing that Mary Magdalene comes to the tomb early while it was still dark and saw that the stone had been taken away from the tomb. Okay, well, now you got some questions. Who did it? Big stone. Couldn't have been a single person. Was it divine intervention? Well, it looks that way. It looks that way. It's going to be an angel that we know who did this, but she doesn't know it yet. She's going to assume, well, somebody stole away the body. And don't take it too hard on Mary because that's the simple, logical explanation for what happened. And this is always helpful to think about. What's the easiest explanation? At first glance, it looks like the easiest thing is that his body was stolen. But then you start to put 2 and 2 together. The linen cloths are there. Okay. Well, why is that? What's going on there? And then Jesus appears to many of the disciples. So at that point, you've got new evidence, new data, and you got to ask, what's the easiest explanation? Well, the easiest explanation is that Jesus Christ rose from the dead. Everybody agrees the tomb is empty on Easter morning. The question is, okay, what does that mean? And that's theology. And this is not vacuous theology. This actually has really fundamental, foundational answers for us, because you got to ask and answer this question. Do you actually think that Jesus Christ was raised from the dead? And I remember asking a pretty prominent person in the community that at the grocery store. And it just really puts that right in front of you. And I wasn't trying to be a jerk or anything like that. We had a good, long conversation, and it was fun. But this is the question of all questions, because if you believe that Jesus came back from the dead, that changes everything. And if you don't, well, then you really got to do some more work on, well, what does life actually mean then? But because Jesus did come back from the dead, I know what life means. Verse 2, so she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple. This is going all the way back to John 1. You remember, we get these details about the chain of who brings who to Jesus. So Jesus calls Andrew, who then calls Peter, and then they come to Jesus together. And you get the same thing with Philip and Nathaniel. And I love it because this just reveals the perfectly human way in which God works to bring people to Christ. So Mary goes and tells Peter and then John, and that's the one whom Jesus loves, and they come to the tomb and said to them, they have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him. So Peter went out with the other disciple, and they were going toward the tomb. Both of them were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. I love this detail. It is absolutely true. It happened. It's written in the scriptures. It is interesting to note this little detail only recorded in the Gospel of John. Wonder why? It's because the guy writing this is the one who beat Peter in a foot race to the tomb. And so you kind of get the sense of a little bit of a rivalry between Peter and John. And that certainly plays out. We know that James and John, that's John's brother, they asked Jesus to be on Jesus' right and his left in his kingdom, which means that Peter would not have one of those spots. And remember, in the listing of the disciples, it's first Peter. So it makes sense that there would be a little bit of a rivalry. This is a God-pleasing thing, though, because it does not cause dissension or envy. Maybe it starts out that way, but what we see in the book of Acts, Peter and John walking side by side in the temple, they heal a paralytic. Great story. And so, hey, rivalries, iron sharpens iron. That's what's going on with Peter and John. Even if it didn't start that way, God's going to use that to strengthen both of these men in their ministries. But just so you know, John is more athletically inclined than Peter. Verse 5, and stooping to look in, he saw the linen cloths lying there, but he did not go in. Okay, so John doesn't actually go in the tomb. He just gets there first. What's up with the linen cloths? I think here's the easiest explanation, is you got to go to the Old Testament. And what we're told in the Old Testament is that on the Day of Atonement, the high priest would put on special linen cloths to make the sacrifice of that goat. And when he was done sacrificing that goat, he would then take off the linen cloths and leave them in the holy place. You apply that to what's happened with Jesus. It's beautiful. He is the high priest, a better high priest than anyone who's ever been a high priest, because he lives forever. And he can totally sympathize with us. He is without sin, because the high priest in the Old Testament would have to make a sacrifice for his own sins because he was beset with weakness, but Jesus was not. So Jesus has these new linen cloths on. He makes the ultimate sacrifice, not a goat, but himself. He is the new Day of Atonement goat. He's both goats, the sacrificial goat and the scapegoat. And now that he has made the sacrifice, and Hebrews is really illustrative on this point, he enters into the holy place once for all to make an offering to his Father. And so now that he's made the sacrifice of himself, the perfect lamb, the perfect goat without blemish, now he takes off the linen cloths to show, hey, the sacrifice is done. It's the new Day of Atonement. I have atoned for all the sins of the world. Verse 6, then Simon Peter came following him and went into the tomb. So Peter actually goes in. He saw the linen cloths lying there. So Peter sees it too. Now you got two witnesses of these things. And you got Mary Magdalene as well. There's your third. Verse 7, and the face cloth, which had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen cloths, but folded up in a place by itself. Now, this is an interesting historical detail about these different cloths. I have not looked into what's called the Shroud of Turin enough. I don't have an opinion about it. I have some friends who are really into it, and they think it's a great apologetic tool to point to. Shroud of Turin, it's this face cloth, which they've done extensive research on, and they say, look, it shows the face of Jesus here. Again, I don't know if to put any stock into it or not. It doesn't sway me one way or the other, but if it is true, hey, useful tool. We'll use everything that we have. Verse 8, then the other disciple who had reached the tomb first, that's John, also went in. So John reaches the tomb first, doesn't go in. Peter goes in, and then John follows him. And so I think in a way this is John saying, yeah, I'm faster than Peter, and I got there first. But he's still showing deference to Peter and saying, we had our rivalry, but now writing this, I acknowledge, okay, Peter, he's first. That's who Jesus appointed to be the leader of the early church. That's good. That's healthy. And he saw and believed. Well, but then John also points out he's the first one to believe. We don't know what Peter's frame of mind was either, but John knows objectively without a doubt he believed. And this is the whole point of the Gospel of John, that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ and have life in his name. We're going to get there at the end of chapter 20. John believes so that we would believe. Verse 9, for as yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead. And Jesus is going to appear to them that very day. And we get this in John 20. We also get it a little more explicitly clear in Luke 24, where it says Jesus appeared to them and he opened up their minds. And he opened up their minds to understand the scriptures. And so he gives them this divine revelation so that they can write down the New Testament themselves. So they are going to understand it when they see the real flesh and blood Jesus resurrected to them. Verse 10, then disciples went back to their homes. And then the question is, okay, now what do we do? And the answer is Jesus is going to continue to come back to them over and over and over again, just like he comes back to us. But this is like you. Hey, you hear the gospel, you encounter the real flesh and blood resurrected Jesus Christ on Sunday morning, just like these guys do. And then you go back to your homes like they did in verse 10. And then the question is, okay, now what? And the answer is, well, we continue to bear witness to this resurrected man that Jesus Christ is Lord of all, and he has ushered in a new creation, and that makes all the difference in the world. God's blessings to you. Hope to see you soon. Thanks.